this is not a colonial project. This is not about occupying territory. It's just trying to find ways of allowing what is already here, the richness that is already here, to be seen again, maybe through the irritation of these new mineral presences. I started with this idea, can we have outlookers? Can we have these sentinels that actually in the light like this you read as silhouettes, as almost black holes in human form that indicate a human presence in space, but in some senses identify a subjective particular body in time that could also be anybody. And that idea of making a new relation between the universal and the subjective, between the intimate and the general, I think that was my first step. Let's engage with the geology of the island, engage with its position in relation to its neighborly islands, and think about time, space, and the development of human consciousness. We are surrounded by deconstructed architecture that is made of individual blocks that have been deconstructed and then re-articulated by archaeologists very carefully and laid out in these lines of stones. You see it everywhere. There's a sense in which this is an absolute objective correlative of a digital age in which information comes in bits, and we make images out of coding that reassociates the bits into pictures. I took this idea then as the basic kind of syntax of the exhibition. Let's start with these indexical bodies that are literally like materialized shadows of a living body, and then let us begin to interrogate the idea of the body as a place. Why do I choose to use this, you could say, rusty, ugly iron? Well, because of two things. One is it's a material that we associate with now, with the Industrial Revolution, with in a way our transformation of the mineral reality of this planet. And two, that it separates these works from, in a way, the great history of the statue made out of bronze or marble. That was always either about idealization or about narrative. And these don't play that game. There is no story here other than the story that the viewer brings to the work. Can we allow a journey through this extraordinary landscape that is already a dialogue between history, geology, and now, and allow the far-off things to be seen at one moment on the horizon and then the next moment in proximity so that you can touch them? And this relation between the revealed and the hidden, between that which can be seen and that which can be touched and that which can be imagined, that's a very important part of the, in a way, invitation of the of this project. This is my wish to use sculpture to reposition our feelings of being alive from very high ideals and the possibility of perfectibility to something felt, bodily, manifest, and material. And for me, this is the most wonderful context to do that. You have an agora, you have a slave market, you have a gymnasium, you have a hippodrome, you have a stadium. In a way, this Greek ideal of the balance, the charisma between mind and body being expressed in the grace of the body and its activity. Linked then also with the sacred and with the economic. I wasn't ever interested in illustrating the ways in which these spaces might have been used historically. But I was interested in taking the whole site, in some senses, as a future map, rather than simply a picture of the past. And thinking in terms of, in a way, sculpture's ability to always talk to a generation that hasn't yet been born. And to use this site as a palimpsest or a kind of meditation ground in which we can think about human futures.
I think you're officially gone. Let's see.
Very frightening, but good. Not knowing where you're going, where the walls are. Nah, not knowing where you're going. It's a bit. You lose yourself on purpose, innit?
Follow them up, or what do you say? Oh, good. Two beautiful shots.
I'm not down today, so I've done it too much.
This is well done.
The truth is that modernism really abolished the body, and I think that was a misjudgment, personally. So then the question is, how do you bring back the body into the discourse of art? We have to treat it differently. We have to treat it as a place, more of a space than an object. I can't see any better way than what I am doing. The real point is that in order to make a viable testimony, you have to be, not just look. You have to inhabit the place of the work. Good point. Yeah.
Ancora. Piano. Vai.
The thigh is in contact. Yeah. A little bit more, but not very much. They are silent, still objects that hopefully in their silence and stillness catalyze all the things that we have: freedom of movement, a range of emotional resonance, the possibility of imaginative speculation. I think of these materialized places as, in a way, waiting like a trap waits for us to lock into their spaces and use them as places to think and feel things that we could not otherwise think or feel. Galileo Galilei's house is just down there. I'm very aware that not only in art but also in science, this city represents the great, in a way, transition from the power of magical thinking to empirical thought. Then I started thinking about the power of money to create great art, but also to create great suffering. This fort was never used to defend Florence. It's much more about the Medici saying, look, we're in control. And from this position, we are able to see what everybody's doing. And if we don't like it, we can deal with it. Silent places that wait for our projection. They don't illustrate an emotion. They are a location where some thought or feeling about the human condition is materialized. But they need us as viewers. What is it to be human? What is the human project? What is the human animal? Is the human part of nature, or through his or her culture somehow apart from nature? Can human nature be a part of nature at large? Sculpture, it seems to me, has always been a place where human beings have tried to somehow transmit something about human experience, something about our thought and our feeling into geological time. We know that mountains and rivers and seas will be here long after we have gone. we, as conscious of our own vulnerability, in some way have always tried. And you can think of Stonehenge, the pyramids, the Pantheon in Rome, these structures that use stone but give it form, give it an absolute form, which is the way that human beings use, in a way, their material of the earth to make a structure that in some way outlasts human lifespan and in some way talks about aspirations that are equally beyond immediate need. It's impossible not to have some political conscience. Art of its nature is about hope. It's about making something that didn't exist before in order to shift the world somehow. That itself is an act that is implicitly hopeful that things can change. And I think on the whole, artists want things to change for the better.
Is that a statue or a real person? He's not even got a thong on.
We have become very used to the idea that art belongs in private houses, private galleries, public institutions, museums and
and, like this one, the National Gallery of Modern Art. For me, I'm very, very keen to liberate art from that ghetto and from, indeed, the whole idea of specialization. It was very important that these works are uninscribed, untitled. They are not carrying with them labels and special designations. They are simply objects that have been humanly made, that are for imaginative purposes, but are, as it were, liberated from the special condition of the museum and allowed to stand for themselves in the elemental world, unprotected, completely unprotected. And that bareness of exposure is matched, in a way, I hope, by a bareness that is to do with human vulnerability.
That's pretty awesome, I like it.
It's a naked statue.
It represents something.
Well, all naked guys.
No. I don't know
What
what it
then?
represents. There'll be something to do with the river.
Well, I think you can go down and ask it.
The degree to which the work is not designated, is not titled, is not linked to information, frees it. But at the same time, it demands of the viewer a degree of, in a way, the active exercise of curiosity. So the standard view is, well, what the hell is this thing doing here? But of course, implicitly, the work is asking that same question back to the viewer. And within that, there becomes a kind of circularity. They don't hide the fact that they are industrially produced. And you could say, what I've tried to do is fold this notion of industrial production or reproduction or mass production with the idea of, in a way, individual life. You know, rust, for example. Rust, people have difficulty with rust. It represents, for most people, neglect, decay, decrepitude. You know, for me, it's a very important principle of acceptable entropy. They will change in time.
One of the statues is at Bonington Bridge, and it's stood under trees. And apparently there were people looking over it when it was getting dark, and they thought it was actually a man who had hung himself. Because that's exactly what it looks like. He's just standing there in the dusk, and police apparently had said, well, you're better phoning about it than not. But it does look a bit spooky, is that the word? Because it's been covered in the trees and the shadows and everything else.
The Western tradition of attempting to make a frozen marble moment is a really dumb idea. I mean, the condition of sculpture is stillness. How can you use that stillness in an effective way? It's evident that the image of a boulder in the stream is actually more effective in terms of amplifying and underlining the essential way in which sculpture deals with time. for, you could say, 2,000 years, art fulfilled the job of representing core narratives, either mythical or historic, of peoples. In the 20th century, it inquired into its own syntax, and as a result became free of those duties of, in a way, representation. I think now we've come to the point where we need to offer back to the public those freedoms and self-determinations that art called for itself. This is an experiment in seeing whether that can happen. And it's a huge privilege to be able to do it in this way, in this place.